Welcome to your Canadiens Connection on Rocket Sports Radio. We are proud to be the trusted source for all things Habs for more than a decade. This is the Canadiens Connection Podcast. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Canadiens Connection Podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio, where we're keeping you informed, engaged, and entertained. And we are talking Montreal Canadiens and Demidov. Demidov, for real? Yes, I do mean it. In fact, from Demidov to the playoffs, it's a convergence of good news in Montreal. It's the title of today's episode, episode 343 of the Canadiens Connection podcast. My name is Amy Johnson. I'm going to be your host for today's show, and can't do this without my co-host, the stalwart Habs authority, our founder and president of Rocket Sports. His name's Rick Stevens. Have you closed your jaw? Have you picked your jaw up off the floor yet?
Well, yeah. It's springtime in Montreal. Everything is coming up roses. Okay,
Yeah.
a little early.
Maybe we're a little ahead of the
a little early
curve
for roses, but really, there's been a full buffet of good news this week for the Montreal Canadiens, and it's hard to take it all in, really. As for Habs fans, they're like, the fire hose is open. Let the good news flow.
It's considering where we were, I don't know, 6 months ago, 5 months ago, 4 months ago. It's quite the turnaround that has taken all predictions and turned them upside down. I'm really glad that at the beginning of, I'm going to give a shout out to our sponsors at DraftKings, because this week I was like, you know what? I think I did a funny thing at the beginning of the season before the season started, and I think that I placed a bunch of 25-cent bets on the Canadiens. Let me just go back and look. And sure enough, I have a bet on the Canadiens to make the playoffs. I have a bet on the Canadiens to win the division or the conference. I can't remember which they're not going to do.
Okay. You lost your quarter there.
I have a bet on them winning the cup.
Oh, wow.
I have a bet on Lane Hutson to be the winner of the Calder.
Really?
I was like,
You're going to cash in.
I might cash in a little bit, Habs. And I thought
I'd have enough for lunch.
I'm a little mad that I didn't bet like $1 on each of those instead of just a quarter, but okay. That's going to be kind of fun. So yeah, it's taken everyone by surprise, the turnaround. And we are here. It's just butterflies and sunshine on the show here today, because we're going to talk about all of the good news that's finally pouring forth from Montreal.
I just saw on Twitter, on X, the road closures this weekend in Montreal. So there's still a little bit of reality, but
I'm so sorry, Montrealers.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
As somebody in our comments said, you got to warn Demidov about the potholes.
He said something, don't let him get lost down a drain pipe or something like that. Yeah. First, though, in the first segment, we're going to get you caught up on all of the news of the week. We're going to start with a quick recap of the 4 games that the Canadiens played between last episode and today's episode. We're going to talk about some roster news, some announcements that have been made, some injury updates that are happening, some contracts that have been signed. And then we are also going to get you some updates on some pretty exciting announcements regarding some key Habs prospects, as well as even more good news coming out of Laval, which has been...
It's good news all over the place.
Forthcoming all season, yeah. Not so great news for Trois Rivières. We'll get to that in a second. So it's the lone outlier today. And then we're going to give you some general news from around the league before we head into our second segment, our big topic this week, a convergence or confluence of good news for the Montreal Canadiens. We're going to talk about the big 4 happy-go-lucky just inject it right into your veins. Good news stories that are just inundating Montreal Canadiens fans this week, and they are very exciting things to talk about. And we're going to talk about where things stack up for the postseason perspective. It's all but assured at this point. Not quite there yet, but all but assured. We've got a great Canadiens Connection question of the week for you that we want to hear your answers to. We've got a ton of responses from you, both in answer to last week's Canadiens Connection question of the week, and if you are subscribed on our YouTube channel, InsideTheCanadiens.com. You know that I showed up with a surprise extra video this week to talk about Demidov and had another question to ask all of you. And we got some great responses from that video. We're going to bring you that as well. We've just got all sorts of happiness and good things flowing. So we should probably get into it. Let's first start with the games that took place last week. How did the Canadiens get here? Well, things started on, I believe that's Saturday. Yes, Saturday night in Montreal. The Flyers visiting, keeping in mind that the last time that the two teams played a couple of weeks prior was the day that Tortorella had been fired, and Philly had some fire in the belly and won that game. Interestingly enough, in that game that Philly had won a couple of weeks ago, the only former Canadian that didn't make a big impact was Ryan Poehling, and I was like, oh man, Pale's just so close. Like, if he could have, well, he's the one who opened the scoring for the Flyers this time around, so he didn't miss his opportunity this time. But this game, Rick, started a concerning trend on the week that would continue from game to game. And it hasn't just been this week. It's been a problem during the season, but it's been very noticeable this week.
Well, Poehling opened the scoring, as you said, his 12th goal of the season. He's had a very good season. That's a career
high for him.
And 4 minutes into the game, he scored, and that goal held up until the third period, until Brendan Gallagher scoring his 20th. There's a milestone for Gallagher. His 20th, just a minute or so into the third period. And the Canadiens scored 3 times in the third period to take this game. It was Nick Suzuki with a shorthanded goal that ended up being the game winner. But yeah, a slow start for Montreal. 4 shots, just 4 shots in the first period. And remember that, 4 shots in the first period, because that's going to come up again.
So they did eke out a win despite their slow start, winning 3-2 over the Flyers. Then on Sunday night, they traveled to Nashville. This was a back-to-back situation and a home and away back-to-back. Traveling to Nashville, Dobeš in net for that one. They did also manage to win by the skin of their teeth, just a 2-1 victory, but it was enough to get the 2 points, extend their win streak to 5 games. But again, Rick, it didn't come easily.
Stamkos opened the scoring 4 minutes in, just like Poehling. Shots in the first period were 8-4 for Nashville. Again, just 4 shots in the first period for Montreal. But this was all Nashville. They outshot the Canadiens 37-17 in the game, more than doubled. Brilliant game by Jacob Dobeš. He made 36 saves, and it was because of Dobeš that the Canadiens got the win. Cole Caulfield provided part of the offense, his 36th, and Patrick Laine also hit the 20-goal milestone. So the Canadiens with a 2-1 victory, but a superb performance by Jacob Dobeš.
So then we go to Tuesday night. The Habs are back in Montreal facing off against the Detroit Red Wings, who is one of the teams chasing behind them for that wild card spot. Are you catching on to a theme here? Detroit scores the opening goal, but Montreal does climb back into this again. A bit more of a handy defeat, 4-1 over the Red Wings. That's 6 consecutive wins, going on the hot streak when they needed to. But third time's a charm. still finding themselves behind early in the game and having to crawl back.
Have you heard this before? The Canadiens got 4 shots in the first period against Detroit. Yes, again, just 4 shots this time. It was Detroit outshooting them 23-4 in the first period. Canadiens give up the opening goal, scored 4 unanswered, but that's a little misleading because they tacked on 2 empty netters at the end of the game. It was a close game, 2-1, just midway through the third period where Josh Anderson scored the game winner.
And this could have been a lot closer because Detroit had a ton of almost opportunities that just didn't go in.
Yeah, but Canadiens, again, bad start, but kind of pampered, kind of charmed, got their 6th straight win.
So then comes Friday night. They had a few days off. Friday night, they traveled to the nation's capital to take on the Ottawa Senators. Again, this is a big deal. Ottawa doesn't have Ottawa's already clinched. Ottawa's not with the services of guys like Brady Tkachuk at the moment. This time, they did it 3 times this week where they put themselves on the back foot to start the game, but they managed to turn it around late and win. Their luck ran out on Friday night, and that 6-game win streak was handily snapped by the Ottawa Senators, who beat Montreal 5-2 at Canadian Tire Center.
So 3 games in a row where the Canadiens got 4 shots in the first period against Ottawa. They got 1 more. They got 5.
That's an improvement.
But Ottawa got 14. 14 shots were 14-5 in the first period for Ottawa. Ottawa scored 3 goals in the first 21 minutes of the game. And Montreal had they couldn't come back and as they had in the other games and that as you said ended their winning streaks. So 4 bad starts in a row. They only lost 1 of those games, and as a member of the organization said, they had been living a charmed life, winning even though they were. I don't know if they were playing poorly, but certainly starting poorly.
They were. And the question now will be, was this just a blip on the radar, or are they going to, is the stumble going to mean more than that? We will have
Can't start bad in the playoffs.
Can't start bad in the playoffs. That will get exposed real quick. The other big thing about that loss, in addition to not extending their win streak to 7 games, is that was their first opportunity to clinch their playoff spot. If they had won that game in regulation on Friday night, it would have been a done deal. Now, granted, it's all but a sure thing, but they still have yet to actually clinch their position. They have another chance to do that on Saturday. As far as the roster goes, some news items for you there. This week, Nick Suzuki was named the NHL's 2nd star of the week. He has put his money where his mouth is after his conversation with Kent Hughes prior to the trade deadline, and has been absolutely on fire ever since then, particularly last week.
4 goals, 3 assists, 7 points in 4 games for the prior week, in which was the review period. So he earned the 2nd star behind Alex Ovechkin, who was obviously the 1st star of the week, and Robert Thomas.
Really? That was a surprise.
Yeah, Robert Thomas from the Blues was the NHL's 3rd star.
Also, this week, the team candidates for the Bill Masterton Trophy had been announced. The Canadiens have selected Josh Anderson to be their candidate representative to compete for the Bill Masterton Trophy this year.
Selected by the Professional Hockey Writers Association as the Canadiens candidate. The last Canadian to win the Masterton Trophy was Carey Price in for the league 2021-22. Josh Anderson will be in some tough company, I think, this year for the Masterton. There's some very compelling stories. Sean Monahan in Columbus, Ovechkin in Washington, Drew Doughty coming back in Los Angeles. Gabriel Landeskog, who we're going to talk about in Colorado, and Dakota Joshua in Vancouver.
So, best of luck to Josh Anderson. We'll see how that all turns out. Emil Heineman is still a mystery, undisclosed injury, still considered day-to-day, but he has practiced wearing a regular jersey. So the question now is just when is he going to slot back into the lineup?
Yeah, undisclosed injury. We don't know what it was, but and the Canadiens say he's day-to-day. He could be back in the lineup anytime soon.
Contracts were signed this week. 2 entry-level contracts. We're first going to talk about a forward. Not who you think it is. Tyler Thorpe signed his 3-year entry-level contract to begin next season, the 2025-26 season. He has also signed an AHL PTO for the remainder of this season. So he has joined Laval. He will play with Laval for the rest of the season. And so Tyler Thorpe, on the rolls.
First prospect taken in the 2024 NHL draft, 5th round pick, 130th overall. First prospect to sign his entry level. Of course, that was quickly followed by somebody else that we'll be talking about in a second. He had a very good season with the Vancouver Giants. In 68 games, he had 27 goals, 25 assists, 52 points. And it'll be interesting to watch. We remember in training camp, there was a line that caused some ruckus that Pascal Vincent put together. Tyler Thorpe is 6'5", 214 pounds. He's a big guy, yeah. And he was put on the line with Luke Tuck and Florian Jacki, and they made some noise in training camp. We'll see how that works out for the rest of the season and maybe the playoffs for Laval.
Absolutely. So, who is that other forward who signed their ELC this week? Well, to everyone's surprise, it would be Ivan Demidov. This was a shocker. We're going to talk about it in detail coming up in the second segment, so we're not going to go into all the ins and outs right now. But yes, Demidov signed his ELC. Again, it will begin not next season. It starts right now in this season. So they're essentially burning a year of his ELC by allowing him to play with the Canadiens for the remainder of this season. But definitely a monumental moment for the Canadiens and their fans this week.
Enormous news. Demidov had a great season with SKA, 49 points in 65 games. That's 19 goals and 30 assists. He was, as Rottenberg said in the playoffs, his team's best player, most valuable player in the playoffs, had 3 goals, 2 assists for 5 points in 6 games. SKA lost out to Moscow Dynamo, and the team's season was over, which meant that we were expecting him maybe to go to the juniors. Maybe all of the signals were not there for him signing, and then that all changed in a very short period of time. And as you said, we'll get into all the ins and outs in our second segment.
Right now, however, we're going to take a closer look at some of the Habs prospects.
It's time for the Rocket Report. The Rocket Sports Media Team is your premier source for information about the Laval Rocket, the AHL affiliate of the Montreal Canadiens, as well as Habs prospects playing in the CHL, NCAA, and leagues around the world.
The 2025 NCAA Division I Ice Hockey Championship is almost complete. A winner will be crowned on Saturday night when the Frozen Four final takes place for the national championship game Saturday night at the Enterprise Center in St. Louis. And it will be Western Michigan facing off against Boston University. Promises to be a very good game. Boston got there by beating Penn State 3-2 in overtime. This was the first time in club history that Penn State had made the Frozen Four final tournament weekend. So this was a big deal for them, and they took Boston University to overtime. Western Michigan ousted Denver also by a score of 3-2 in double overtime. So obviously all of the semifinal games leading up were tightly contested, very competitive. But Rick, it does mean with Denver losing to Western Michigan, that has a ripple effect on the Canadiens as well.
Just there's a typo there. Boston University beat, and that's my fault. Boston University beat Penn State 3-1. That was not in overtime.
3-1.
Western Michigan beat Denver 3-2 in double overtime. But all the same, it's the same result.
Forget whatever I just said.
No, you're fine. Sam Harris, playing for Denver, eliminated. So in essence, we told you over the last couple of weeks, the Canadiens started the 16-team tournament with 4 prospects potentially getting to the final, but they will have none. The prospects that you will see that you may have heard of, Boston University has Cole Yzerman, Islanders prospect, Cole Hutson, Lane's brother, Capitals prospect, and Mikhail Yegorov. The Devils gold, he looks really good. Western Michigan has a Flyers prospect in Alex Bump.
Of the Bump, Bonk, and I can't remember the other. Yeah. There was that draft was all of the Bs, but Alex Bump is a great prospect. So best of luck to Boston University and Western Michigan. Have fun with it tonight, guys. Also in NCAA news, the Hobey Baker Award for 2025 was announced, and Tampa Bay Lightning prospect Isaac Howard is this year's Hobey Baker winner.
Maybe a little bit of a surprise. That was announced on Friday night. He edged out Ryan Leonard, Washington prospect, who was the runner-up. Of course, Ryan Leonard was a top 10 draftee in that draft. Isaac Howard towards the end of that draft. Isaac Howard, known for up until this point, known for his wardrobe at that the white suit and looking pretty cool in that draft. But yes, on Friday night, it was announced that he is the Hobey Baker Award winner for this year. For whatever reason, Tampa Bay hasn't yet come to a contract agreement with him, and Howard's at this point planning on returning to Michigan State next season.
Moving away from the NCAA to the AHL, Laval had a little bit of trouble finishing out their Western Canada road trip last week. While they had good fortune when they were playing in Manitoba, when they shifted gears to Abbotsford and played the Abbotsford Canucks, they actually dropped both of those games. The first one was a 3-2 loss in a shootout to Abbotsford. And then the next day, it was a 4-3 loss to Abbotsford. So could be something to keep an eye on if Laval goes deep into the playoffs and they get to the Calder Cup final. Abbotsford is one of the teams that is in contention that has been very strong and has had a recent resurgence that they could eventually see Abbotsford again way down into the playoffs, looking far into the future forecast. And so you'll want to remember that they struggled against them in these 2 games when you get to that point. But then they turned things around on Friday night when Laval traveled to Rochester, beating the Amerks 4-2. And that has allowed Laval to clinch the North Division as the North Division champions for the second time in franchise history. They are first in the North, first overall in the AHL with just 4 regular season games remaining, and they're just cruising right along. They also signed a contract this week, a 1-year, one-way AHL contract for next season for forward Joe Dunlap. He has signed a PTO to finish out the remainder of this season, but he will be on a 1-year, one-way AHL contract with Laval next season. And Rick, he is straight out of the NCAA.
He is, and he's a little bit older. He's 25 years old. He spent 5 years playing for Ohio State in the NCAA, so a little bit more mature. And it's going to be an interesting. I had a chat with Chris G. Chris G. covers Laval for us. Had a chat with him about the little dance that's going to go on. Normally, NHL teams during the playoffs have a group of players on reserve. They call them the Black Aces. Will the Montreal Canadiens call up some of Laval's best players to act as Black Aces, or will they not want to, disturb what's expected to be a lengthy run in the playoffs, given that Laval has been the top team in the AHL? So there's some extra players like Joe Dunlop signed that, and certainly call-ups are available from Trois-Rivières as well, to fill in any gaps if there is a Black Aces crew that is going to be attached to the Montreal Canadiens.
It'll be interesting. One of the mystery, the enigma around David Reinbacher continues. He has traveled with the Rocket for this 2-game road trip to New York this weekend. He did not play on Friday night. And when asked about his status, I believe earlier in the week, maybe on Wednesday at practice, Pascal Vincent said, quote, "He's coming on the road with us. We hope he can play 1 or 2 games next week and see how his body reacts." So something's going on with David Reinbacher. He's been in and out of the lineup a bit, has traveled, has not traveled, didn't play on Friday night. We'll see if he plays in Syracuse on Saturday night. But bit of a question mark as to what's going on there.
And Pascal Vincent seemed to, I don't know if it was answer or deflect. All he said was that Reinbacher had experienced a small injury, so maybe that was trying to get people away from talking about his knee, his surgery, and the questions about whether this was inflammation or whatever. He didn't really answer the question, but he offered maybe an alternative explanation or trying to calm down all of the discussion. But really, the organization, and it's as Pascal Vincent said himself, he's taking his orders from the Canadiens. They've offered very little with respect to what's going on with David Reinbacher.
And while earlier this week, before Laval was back, I think he skated at the Bell Center for like one-on-one in Canadiens practice gear, which I guess that was just to get him out on the ice. I don't know.
But why not in Laval gear? And that caused a bit of flurry amongst the media. Is he preparing for Canadians? Not so, but they're doing some odd things.
They are. The one frowny face news we have for this week is the Trois-Rivières. The Lions in the ECHL, they struggled this week, dropping all 3 contests. Lost 4-3 to Maine, 4-1 to Maine, and then dropped a 5-2 contest as well. That's dropped them actually down to 5th place in the ECHL. I don't think too much to worry about as long as they can snap out of that and turn things around again. Just a couple of hockey notes from around the general NHL before we take our first break prior to our big topic this week. And Rick discussed this a little bit a few minutes ago. Just a tremendous story. Some people say the AHL, Well, believe me, everyone in Colorado was watching the AHL Colorado Eagles on Friday night when Gabriel Landeskog took to the ice after having been loaned to the Eagles on a conditioning assignment and skated for the first time since, 2022?
That's a long time ago.
He played his first game last night. He is healthy. He's getting back. He's on a conditioning stint. It's a major moment for Landeskog and for the Avalanche as well. But
seeing him in the pregame, high-fiving the guys in the corridor before they go out on the ice, and you must think, all of those Colorado Eagle players are like, hey, this is Gabriel Landeskog.
Yeah.
It was kind of a fun story, and making his way back, the rich get richer for the playoffs for the Avalanche.
After the game, he seemed to be in pretty good spirits, but he did say, right now I'm exhausted. So I'm sure he is. Yes. Next up, Alexander Ovechkin did finally catch and pass Wayne Gretzky this past week. But the next, will he stop there? Because is there a next record that Ovechkin is going to chase? Elliot Friedman in his 32 Thoughts this week mentioned that right now, in total goals for Ovechkin in his pro career, that's regular season, playoffs, and in Russia, he's at 1,022 goals. That is 50 behind Gretzky in the same scope, regular season, playoffs, and, well, WHA.
And 49 behind Gordie Howe at 1071. Yager's in there too somewhere, but Yager had many more seasons.
Yager just
it's an interesting next record for him to look at. He won't add to his goal totals today. He's a healthy scratch for the Capitals. The Blue Jackets doing their part to remain alive as we record. They have a 3-0 lead on the Capitals
in the first intermission.
First period. Yeah.
One last thing before we take our first break here. If there was good shocking news this week, there was also some very tragic shocking news this week that happened not once but twice. Just kind of shockwaves throughout the hockey community in general with the announcements this week that we lost Greg Millen and Ray Shero, both in their 60s, both at a young age, and just very tragic news on both accounts.
Yeah, and we send condolences to their respective families.
Absolutely. All right, we are going to take our first break here on the Canadiens Connection podcast. We're going to hear from our sponsors over at DraftKings. And then when we come back, we are going to talk about all of this bountiful good news that, the Canadiens and their fans are just suffering under the weight of. Lots of great things to talk about and why they are so important. You're not going to want to miss that. So stick around. You are listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio.
Hey, basketball fans, are you ready to win some real money? Check out Pick 6 from DraftKings. When it comes to basketball payouts, DraftKings Pick 6 dunks on its rivals, including Prize Picks. Just select 2 or more players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat, like points, rebounds, three-pointers, and more. Pick 6 is available in most states, including California, Texas, Georgia, Missouri, and more. Don't settle for a smaller payout. Switch to Pick 6 and cash in your basketball knowledge. New players get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly on just a $5 entry. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins. Only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
And welcome back to the Canadiens Connection podcast here on Rocket Sports Radio. Once again, my name is Amy Johnson. You can find me on X if you'd like to follow my coverage over there at Flyers Rule. And with me in the studio, of course, is our president and founder here at Rocket Sports, Rick Stevens. You'll definitely want to be following him on X at Rocket Sports. That is our main account on X where you get all of our content and information. You can also follow this podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Habs Connection. Also be sure that you are subscribed to the podcast. Share the podcast. That's the best way to help us out and share your excitement about the Montreal Canadiens. Also subscribe to our YouTube channel over at InsideTheCanadiens.com. And don't forget, This is an interactive podcast. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your comments. We want to hear your feedback. We want to hear your thoughts about the Canadiens. We want your questions, which we're actually going to have a call to you to send us your questions here in a little bit. And we want, of course, to hear your answers to our questions of the week each week. The way to do that is to send us a text on the Rocket Sports text line 585-3-ROCKET. You can also drop a comment on our YouTube channel or on any of the social media accounts I just mentioned. Just send in your comments and responses. All right, well, here it is. The Canadiens are going to make the playoffs for the first time in 4 years, and that's a big, momentous occasion. We also now know that Ivan Demidov is going to play for the Montreal Canadiens this season. We don't have to wait till next season, like we thought. Jacob Fowler has started his pro career. That's a big deal. He's going to be with Laval for their playoff run. Lane Hutson blowing everybody out of the water. Everything's off the charts with that young defenseman. Like, as Rick said, everything's coming up roses.
Yeah, that's four. That's four pieces of good news. The playoffs for the Canadiens. Demidov going to be in a game. Jacob Fowler, Lane Hutson. Those are all big pieces, and it's all coming together at the same time. And let's be honest, Demidov, Hutson, Fowler are going to be Montreal's most impactful forward defenseman and goaltender as the Canadiens, strive to meet the goal that's set out by Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes of being a perennial contender year after year after year. You're going to hear those names, and it all started to come together, this week.
It really did. So let's just kind of take a deep look at really what's changed in the past week with each of these four things, because there's been a lot of good feeling and a lot of hope and optimism for the last number of weeks. But this week, there was definitely a pivot to something much more solidified, much more tangible. And now it starts to really feel real. And so why is that? Well, let's talk about Lane Hutson first. Lane Hutson has been phenomenal since he started with the team back in the beginning of the season. He has been, to use the Canadiens' phrase, he has been in the mix on the Calder talk decently throughout the season. But within the last couple of weeks, the winds have shifted, and it has become the Lane Hutson Calder show.
Yeah, and as you said, there was questions at the beginning of this season. Is he going to be able to be in tough minutes? How's his defensive game going to be? We know he can provide the offense, but he's done everything. He's answered every question. We've talked about his milestones, and right now he's just 1 point back of the Chris Chelios record for most points by a rookie defenseman. He's been shut out the last couple of games, but he's going to do that before the end of the season. But this week, ESPN put out a survey, and they do this periodically on major NHL awards, or at least the awards that are voted on by the Professional Hockey Writers Association, and they survey those hockey writers to get a sense of where their votes would be placed if the vote was held right now. So for the Calder Trophy, at various stages, Macklin Celebrini has been in there. Michkov has been in there. Dustin Wolf. But right now, the ESPN is reporting that in their survey, Lane Hutson earned 87% of the first place votes in their final survey of the Calder Trophy, which is incredible, because when they did this last month, Lane Hutson was getting 11% of the first place votes. It's this stretch that Lane Hutson has helped carry the Canadiens with some help, but been the primary driver to help the Canadiens make the playoffs that has vaulted him up in the eyes of most of the voters to that first place mark. And how did he do that? One of the PHWA voters said, quote, Hutson has not only been the best rookie, but he's been one of the league's most impactful defensemen down the stretch. And in fact, if you look at the Norris Trophy is wrapped up, and Lane Hutson is not going to win that this year, but he's going to get some votes. He's going to get some nods. The other issue is that Celebrini, Michkov, they haven't been playing in meaningful games. Dustin Wolf has. And I think Dustin Wolf last month was probably in the lead for this. He's had a phenomenal season, but Lane Hutson has taken over that first place, and in a dominant way. Here's another quote from one of the voters. Quote, Lane Hutson cemented himself as my probable number one choice with his performance down the stretch and his defensive improvement over the course of the year. So it looks like trending right now, Lane Hutson is the favorite to win the Calder Trophy.
And what a big step for the Montreal Canadiens to have a player winning an award like that this year. It would be absolutely incredible. Jacob Fowler, we've talked about his accolades and accomplishments during the first 2 years of his collegiate career, and now that he has shifted to pro hockey and signed here as well, doesn't mean that the accolades from the NCAA have stopped coming. He has learned a couple of things just this week, just on Friday, that he has been named as a first-team All-American this year from the American Hockey Coaches Association, which is a pretty big deal.
And not only that, he was a nominee last year, finalist last year, but this year announced on Friday that he's the winner of the Mike Richter Award for the best goalie in NCAA hockey. That's a huge and beat out some very good prospects there. Mm-hmm. And so congratulations to him. Of course, we've been telling you all season. Phenomenal season with the Boston College Eagles, 35 games, 25-7-2 record, 940 save percentage, 163 goals against average, and 7 shutouts. You might be interested to know that with the Laval Rocket, there are now 2 Mike Richter Award winners. Caden Primo won the Mike Richter Award in 2019, playing for Northeastern. His record during that award-winning year, 25-10-1, similar, 25 wins each for Fowler and Primo. Primo had a similar save percentage, just a little bit less than the 940 of Fowler. He had a 933 save percentage. His goals against so were quite a bit higher at 2.09. Now a phenomenal season for Jacob Fowler, and now he begins his pro career. And in fact, he's going to debut on Saturday night.
Yeah, he actually dressed for the first time on Friday night. He served as Primo's backup for their game in Rochester, which they did win. But he will get the start, his first pro start. And why not just throw you right into the Flames? Because his first pro start is going to come on the road, and it's going to come in Syracuse against the Crunch, which is a notoriously vicious building to play in.
Yeah, we love that building. Yeah. We love the views in that building. The crowd is vicious. I remember Lefebvre explaining that the corners are a little bit different in that building, which makes the physicality that much different. And for a goaltender, the puck's going to come off there a little bit differently than he's used to. But it'll be, he gets up for the big moments, so it'll be fun to see him between the pipes for Laval on Saturday night.
Good luck to him. Side note, Go ahead.
I was just one more point for Jacob Fowler. And he had a really interesting quote this week. Quote, where is it here? Jacob Fowler, "It's not really a secret. I've grown up as a Habs fan with a lot of family up there. It's kind of a blessing. You want to play where hockey means most, and I wouldn't have it any other way." This is big for him, and he's ready for the moment.
Absolutely. All right. So that takes care of what has changed about Lane Hutson for this week. What's really changed in the world of Jacob Fowler and his impact for the Canadiens this week. Now let's talk about Ivan Demidov. Boy, this is just, if there was something that universally just sent a ripple effect through the entire hockey community, the NHL community this week, it was the announcement that, hey, just kidding. He's coming early. He's coming now. And as I said on the YouTube video that we put out on our channel this week, like just social media, Habs social media and fans, it just exploded. Just this came so far out of the blue. No one was. It's not like this was something that, oh, maybe. Well, let's see. Keep your fingers crossed. Like this was almost like a done deal. Like, no, this is not. Don't get your hopes up. It's not going to happen. Wait till the summer when he comes for development camp. And now he's here. And Rick Elliot Friedman kind of spoke to how much of a drastic thing this is in his 32 Thoughts edition this week.
Yeah, Elliot wrote, "Doesn't take much to feel the energy in Montreal when the team is making a late season playoff charge." Okay, that's one part of it. Mm-hmm. But downtown was absolutely electrified by Ivan Demidov's shocking signing. It was shocking. Mm-hmm. And for those that say, "Oh, I saw it," no, it was shocking. Friedman goes on to say, "It's a massive W for the Canadiens, particularly since multiple sources felt as recently as Monday that it was unlikely to happen this season." He goes on to say, "It's a reminder about two things when it comes to KHL negotiations. First, what's true now might not be true in 15 minutes. And second, NHL teams don't like to say anything until it's is done until it's absolutely positively 100% done." And, you know, all of everything coming out of St. Petersburg was, we remember that he may not even play in the playoffs, mm-hmm. and maybe he'll get sent to the junior league. And then once Scott was done, he'd probably go to. Everything has changed, and whether this was the plan from Scott St. Petersburg all the way along or not, they didn't give anything away. So why did they do it? After saying, no, and trying to sign him, and why did they do it? And I think LeBrun said, well, they want to send a message to the NHL that don't worry about drafting Russian prospects. Okay, that might be a reason. They haven't worried about that in the past, and remember, that's probably the reason that he ended up in the Canadiens' lap, is because teams were worried about when he would come over. But for me, I go back to that video, and we remember that meeting in December when Kent Hughes and the entourage went over to St. Petersburg to meet with Demidov, to check with him, to assure him that the organization was looking after and ready for him, and to check with the team about his ice time and all that sort of thing. There was a video is 25 minutes long that was put out by Roman Rotenberg himself, and he was all mic'd up, and he was meeting with Kent Hughes, Vinny LeCavalier, and Nick Bobrov around a table. What was the most important thing? What did they spend the most time on in that discussion? There was a lot of remember when kind of stuff that didn't really mean anything. But what they talked about, Roman Rotenberg said, he stressed how important it was for Russia to return to international hockey tournaments. And he kept saying, isn't that right? Don't you want to see Russia? Don't you want to see? And Vinny Lecavalier, yeah, sure. Ooh, that would be nice. And just kind of playing along. And he kept coming back to this. Keep in mind that Roman Rotenberg's father is a close associate of Vladimir Putin. He's actually on the sanction list for Canada. You can't do business with that guy. And so there's some, Putin wants to get back into Russia being seen as a hockey power and wants them to be accepted back into the hockey community. And so I think that this whole good gesture thing, this surprise thing, and we're doing this for the Canadiens and the NHL, is goodwill. Now can we get back into and remember that Kent Hughes was criticized in some quarters for kind of going against. He wasn't supposed to go over there, and he said, listen, I have no regrets. So I think that has something to do with the fact why St. Petersburg, why SKA was willing to do this at this point.
So once the announcement was made, then it became everyone on pins and needles. Okay, when's he coming? When's he coming? When's he coming? And naturally, there was some paperwork to take care of first. There were visas to take care of, work visas to take care of, all of those types of things. But finally, Ivan Demidov arrived in Toronto on Thursday evening. Yes, I said Toronto. He arrived at Pearson, welcomed by about 3 dozen Habs fans or so there at Pearson to welcome him to Canada. He and his girlfriend Katya, and it had been a long flight for them. They actually the last leg of their trip was traveling from Istanbul in Turkey, 10-hour flight to Pearson in Toronto. So I think it was probably nice for them to have a little bit of fanfare at the airport.
Sure. Yeah, and it was great to see the fans there. It had been described as a mob scene. It wasn't that at all. There was, as you said, about 3 dozen Canadiens fans, some in jerseys, some with signs, some looking for autographs. They didn't get any of that, but kind of stalking out those immigration. If you've been through Pearson Airport coming from an international destination, you know how you go through those opaque doors and you come out. There's 2 sets. After you're done, you picked up your luggage and you go through immigration. And there was the fans out there, and they were enthusiastic and occasionally got into some chants. Kind of a cringy podcaster hanging out there too, which was a little weird. I found that weird. But it was interesting that Demidov and his girlfriend were coming, and they were escorted through the airport by assistant general manager of the Canadiens, John Sedgwick, and several members of the Toronto Police Force. Canadians expecting that there would be a crowd there as his flight information was made public. Mm-hmm. So they avoided coming out those 2 double doors, and all of a sudden took a quick right. But before they did, Demidov spotted the fans there waiting for him. Big smile on his face, quick wave to the fans. Then they took a sharp right and exited different doors and straight out the front outside level. And there was a big black van there waiting for him. And Demidov was right in there. He's he's got hockey bags, he's got sticks, he's got his hands full. He was going to load the bags, and John Sedgwick's like, you don't have to do that anymore, son. So he was ushered into the van, didn't say anything. It was a nice event, and nice that he got such a warm welcome. Not in Montreal, but from Habs fans in Toronto.
Yeah, absolutely. Friday was a busy day for him. He needed to go to the U.S. Embassy in Toronto to work out some visa issues there. but then took the opportunity while he was downtown, while he's in Toronto, to visit the Hockey Hall of Fame. And I think I like that was worked into his schedule on Friday because, of course, that's something that he should visit and see.
For sure. And it's the Hockey Hall of Fame. It's a lot of NHL stuff, but there's a lot of international stuff that he would recognize as well.
Absolutely. So, of course, the Canadiens were in Ottawa on Friday, so he was in Toronto by himself, likely watched the game from his hotel room on Friday night. But Saturday morning, finally got to meet his teammates for the first time. He did get on the ice Saturday morning for the optional game day skate with the extras. There's plenty of media in attendance to capture that. He will attend Saturday night's game versus Toronto, but once again will be a healthy scratch. Not quite going to get into a game yet. This time he'll watch the game in person.
That's so weird. See, he was a healthy scratch for the Ottawa game. A healthy scratch. It's kind of weird, but that's how it works. And yeah, seeing him on the ice in Canadiens practice gear for the game day skate. I mean, he just looks phenomenal. He looks happy. He looks confident. It was great.
So he will likely not meet with the media until Monday. It's believed that he'll do a media availability on Monday with Kent Hughes. That's the first time that fans or any of us should hear from him. And that is all in preparation for him to likely make his NHL debut at the Bell Center on Monday night against the Chicago Blackhawks. And I'm going to go ahead and guess that anybody who just happened to have already had tickets to that game is thanking their lucky stars.
Or selling them and making
or
a
selling
killing.
them for an enormous profit.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's he going to look like?
Well,
and where is he going to play? And all those kinds of questions. It's going to be answered very quickly. But if you've been following him, his ice time varied, but he was impactful. Roman Rothenberger said that he learned a lot, he developed a lot over the season, and was their best player in the playoffs. And his most frequent line mate, or at least center, was Evgeny Kuznetsov, NHL veteran, this is his first year back in the KHL. So he's going to be used to playing with talented players, with quality NHL players. That shouldn't be an issue. There's also, I see online a lot of Habs fans saying, "Oh well, better stick him on the fourth line because that he's coming from that big ice surface and he's going to be confined on NHL surface." Well, you may be surprised to know that he won't have to adjust at all. In fact, most arenas these days in the KHL use either the NHL standard ice surface, which is 200 by 85, we know that, or the finished sized ice surface, which is kind of termed the hybrid version, at 200 by 92. So just 7 feet difference, 7 feet less wide than in the NHL. And his home arena, the SKA Arena in St. Petersburg, is 200 by 85, exactly the same as the Bell Center. In fact, that arena is the largest in the world in terms of capacity. They have a hockey capacity of 22,500. The Bell Center is the second largest in the world. So as far as, everybody used to the European style or the international style, the 200 by 100 foot arenas, there's only a handful of those left in the KHL. And as new arenas are being built, those are being replaced. Shouldn't be an issue for Demidov.
And what number will he wear? Well, that's already known. He is going to wear number 93, which hasn't been worn for a couple of decades because Doug Gilmour was the last one to wear it in the early 2000s.
Kapanen was asked about Kapanen wearing 91. It'd be fascinating to see Kapanen 91, Laine 90, 92, and Demidov 93. There's a line for you. But Kapanen was asked, what about, what will you do if Demidov asks for 91? He said, I don't know. It doesn't mean anything to me. I was given this when I arrived here, so I haven't heard anything, but maybe we can work something out. So I think he'll be 93 for this season. There be a swap in the summer? You might want to think about that before you run out and buy the 93 jersey. Or at least be aware that it could change.
So where will he play if he does make his debut on Monday night? Where is he going to slot in? This was the question that I asked to all of our viewers on YouTube. We wanted to know what they thought. And we've got some great answers in regards to that coming up in the next segment. Let's take a gander through the lines. First and foremost, he's probably not going to play on the third line. I think that's pretty...
Yeah, that's in my mind, that's the most unlikely. Dvorak, Anderson, and Gallagher are set. They have good chemistry together. They're a line that Marty St. Louis relies on. That line staying together, you won't. The most unlikely is that he'll be on the third line.
Then it's a matter of what methodology are they going to use with him to start? One option is for them to put him maybe in a slightly less pressure situation, put him on the fourth line with Evans and Armia, and Michael Pezzetta would be watching from the press box again.
Yeah, I don't know about this one. I guess he'd have less minutes and easier matchups is sort of the what I hear fans saying, except that in the playoffs that line's going to play a very important role. They're going to take all the defensive matchups and be a shutdown line for Marty St. Louis. Evans, Armia, and whether it's Kapanen, whether it's Heineman, that line is going to have an important role, and that doesn't fit necessarily with Demidov's DNA. It's going to have a lot of defensive zone starts, so that opens that player up to, if it takes him time to get used to defensive assignments. I don't necessarily see that happening.
You could go to the opposite end of the spectrum and say, hey, in for a penny, in for a pound, you're playing on the top line, and maybe take Slavkovsky's spot.
Slavkovsky hasn't been, he's been very inconsistent this season and particularly lately. But I don't see Marty wanting to mess with that chemistry. They like to play together. And yes, it'd be fascinating to see how Demidov plays with Caulfield and Suzuki, and maybe if you need offense in the playoffs, you make that switch, you put him up there. It's possible. I don't see it happening right off the start.
So that leaves the second line with Newhook and Laine. We've had Kapanen there, who has looked good there at times.
But Kapanen was tossed there. When his season ended in the SHL, he came over and Heineman was injured, and Heineman had been playing on that. That's been the most dysfunctional line, I think, this season. Heineman had been there for a little bit of a stretch. He only had 12 games of NHL experience when he was tossed there. Would it be any different for Demidov to take that spot? And I think he would probably understand the style of play that Patrick Laine plays, and set him up for his shots. That line would have more offensive zone starts. We know Demidov is very comfortable playing with very talented players. We've already mentioned that in the KHL. I think that's the most likely. It's going to be fascinating to watch.
Lane Hutson was asked about Ivan Demidov's arrival. And here is what one young phenom had to say about the newest arriving young phenom.
Yeah, I think I've seen, tons of his highlights all the time. So he's a pretty special player for sure. And, it looks like he could play, anywhere in the lineup and help a team. So, you see all the tools he has, his skating, his shot, his IQ. There's not much to dislike in his game. So I think he's going to fit in just fine, and it's going to be fun.
They're each fans. Lane is a fan of Demidov and vice versa. They met at the 2024 draft. Lane was there to see his brother get drafted. They met and have stayed in touch since. And Lane said that, if he sees something, he'll send off a little text saying, gee, that was cool. And so they've kept in touch a little bit. And I thought it was interesting. And Lane had an adjustment to the league, and he's learned things. And he said, it wasn't always easy or smooth at the beginning, so he can offer that to Ivan Demidov, saying, just be patient, things will come.
Absolutely. All right, so that's Lane Hutson, that's Jacob Fowler, that's Ivan Demidov. Are you just? Does your cup floweth over with all of these happy, good news stories? Well.
And the least important part of the news, it seems odd to say, but
the wild card race is all but locked up. I will just for dramatic effect should let you know that 4 minutes left to go in the second period. The Blue Jackets are up a nice little 6-0 over the Washington Capitals this afternoon.
Tough day at the office for Hunter Shepard, who was called. That's not Charlie Lindgren in goal.
No.
Hunter Shepard is. Maybe they made this switch after 5 goals.
I don't know. But the Canadiens, through 79 games, sitting in with a 39-31-9 record, 87 points. For all intents and purposes, it's going to be Ottawa and Montreal claiming the 2 Eastern Conference wildcard spots, which, yes, will put the Canadiens back in the postseason for the first time in 4 years.
So we've been talking each week about tiebreakers and all. Yeah, that doesn't really apply. The Canadiens, their playoff odds, according to MoneyPuck.com, 98% chance of making the playoffs. They're on pace for a 90-point season. All of the other contenders, the Blue Jackets are the close have the highest odds at 0.8%. So, yeah, that's not going to happen.
It would have to.
Catastrophic failure.
Catastrophic failure by the Canadiens, and Columbus needs to continue this win streak that they're on. So the Canadiens have 3 games left. They play in Toronto versus the Maple Leafs on Saturday, and then they have 2 home games to wrap up the regular season. Monday versus the Blackhawks, Wednesday versus the Hurricanes.
Monday with Demidov.
Demidov, possibly.
Likely, yeah.
And then, are you ready to talk playoff schedule?
Playoff schedule.
This just feels weird.
Yeah. Yeah, so...
I had things scheduled to do next weekend,
you're busy. You're busy. Next Saturday, April 19th, that's when the NHL playoffs begin. I think it's unlikely that the Canadiens will play on the opening night of the playoffs, mostly because the Canadian regular season is over on Wednesday, but Washington and Toronto, there's still an outside chance that they could play Toronto, most likely Washington, but both of those teams play a game on Thursday. So the NHL won't slot them in to play on Saturday. That means that the Canadiens will likely start the playoffs on Sunday or Monday. This Sunday would probably be an afternoon game, but that's all to be worked out yet. But expect that we will be in next week's podcast talking about when the playoffs will start for the Montreal Canadiens.
Yes, this is not a drill, people. This is not a drill. So, for our Canadiens Connection question of the week, here's what we want to hear from you this week. Which good news story surprised you the most? The fact that the Canadiens are making this year's playoffs, or the fact that Demidov is actually joining the Canadiens this year? Which of those surprised you the most? Why? Just give us all your excitement. We want to hear from you. 5853-ROCKET. You can send us a text there, 5853-ROCKET. Drop us a comment on YouTube. Send us a reply or a DM on social media at Habs Connection. We just want to hear what you think and what surprised you the most as we get hyped, get amped up, get ready. Last week of the regular season is here, and for the first time in a long time, Canadians aren't going to be playing golf next weekend. So keep all of that in mind. Start thinking about your answers to that, and we're going to take our last break here on the show. Coming back after this break and this message from our sponsors over at DraftKings, we are reading your responses not only to last week's Canadiens Connection question of the week, but also to this week's YouTube video about Ivan Demidov. We've got lots of viewer responses and listener responses to bring to you. You're not going to want to miss it. Stick around. You're listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio.
Hey, basketball fans, are you ready to win some real money? Check out Pick 6 from DraftKings. When it comes to basketball payouts, DraftKings Pick 6 dunks on its rivals, including Prize Picks. Just select 2 or more players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat, like points, rebounds, three-pointers, and more. Pick 6 is available in most states, including California, Texas, Georgia, Missouri, and more. Don't settle for a smaller payout. Switch to Pick 6 and cash in your basketball knowledge. New players get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly on just a $5 entry. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins. Only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
And welcome back to episode 343 of Canadiens Connection podcast on Rocket Sports Radio. Don't forget, be sure you are subscribed to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Be sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel. We don't want you to miss any of our content that comes out on either place. And if you're able to do so, drop us a like, drop us a 5-star review, hit share. We want to spread the word far and wide as we run up to the playoffs here, that the Canadiens Connection is the place to be for your podcast listening each and every week. So last week we asked you which player deserves the most credit for helping keep the postseason dream alive for the Montreal Canadiens. We had some really terrific responses to this. And Rick, I think you're going to start with an answer from our good friend, Center Heiss.
Center Heiss and I have been going back and forth, respectfully exchanging our views on some topics. And so this week, Center Heiss 7948 says, great show again. I guess I'll be a little boring this week. I totally agree with Rick.
We'll allow it.
Yeah. So he said Hutson, Gooley, and thirdly, Suzuki. All 3 are carrying this team. I'm so happy I called it wrong. The Habs look like they may pull this off. That is a playoff spot, the final wild card. This is one I'm glad to be wrong about. Go Habs, go. I'm pumped. Keep up the great work, Amy and Rick.
Very nice. We also had a great response to this question from at Frank Huber 991. He says, most indispensable, Lane Hutson. Suzuki et al. Play as a unit, while the rest of the guys watch from the bench. But every single player has a chance to be on the ice with Hutson, to be the hero at any moment, and that's invigorating. It matters. It makes a magic all its own, sweeping aside the impossible and making it happen. So Hutson it is. I think that's a great response.
Another vote for Lane Hutson there. Now we move to Demidov and the responses to the video you put out this week.
I asked where he should play in the lineup.
Where Demidov should play in the lineup. This comes from @PatrickGauthier3464. Just can't wait. I haven't been this excited in decades. About hockey or just in general. I hope they will just let him adapt and give him what he can handle and nothing more.
I like that answer. Our friend Leonid also has a submission on this answer, and he says, I think Ivan will start on the third line. However, it would be better for the young talent to be on the second line. It's not that he's a star, it's that Demidov plays the better, more combination game that line demonstrates. And in addition, in the first lines, you play against the first lines. That is less physical hockey. So this would simplify Ivan's adaptation to North American hockey. I don't expect anything special from him at the end of this season. Now the team can give him more. Right now, the team can give him more than he can give the team. Give, first of all, in terms of emotions and experience. And I think that's a good point that Leonid makes, that coming in now at the end of the season, amongst all the playoff hype and whatnot, Demidov's going to get all of those, the excitement, the jitters, the firsts, all of that kind of stuff is going to happen now. And so when he comes in September to training camp, he's going to be probably a little more, he doesn't have to make those firsts for next season, and he'll be just ready to rock and roll.
And just for those that are joining us and maybe haven't heard from this, Leonid, before he is in St. Petersburg, and has followed Demidov's progression this season.
Yes, he has.
Next comment comes from @DavidWillett, C8Q. He suggests that Demidov should start on the fourth line so that Evans can cover him to start. Quickly responded to by @DeanRamondo 5850. Hey David, no, I wouldn't. He'd be playing like 8 minutes a night. It's only for like the last two games. Put him on the second line and let him set up Patrick Laine.
All right. So lots of opinions, lots of ideas. And as you said earlier, we'll know the answer to this in just a few days, but it's going to be very exciting. No matter where he plays, it's going to be exciting. And keep in mind, too, that where he plays for these last two regular season games might not be where he plays if he's slotted in during the playoffs as well. So
no, that's right. The Marty St. Louis got some time to experiment in games in Chicago and against Chicago and Carolina. And then the Canadiens will have a couple of practice days to work through some things before they start the playoffs.
Yep.
Like I said, either Sunday or Monday.
Yep. So what you see right out of the gate might not, just like Elliot Friedman said, the first rule of thumb is whatever's true in the KHL now might not be 15 minutes later. Wherever Ivan Demidov starts might not be the same 15 minutes later either. So just keep that in mind. So this week we've got Montreal playing in Toronto against the Maple Leafs. Expect a competitive game in that one. It's not going to be Toronto taking their foot off the gas. It will be Jacob Dobeš versus Anthony Stolarz in between the pipes. Should be an exciting game to watch. It's going to be tough because Laval is playing at the same exact time as Montreal on Saturday night, and we're also going to be seeing Jacob Fowler's debut.
That's right.
So it's going to be some dual screens, I think, going on. Then Monday night, Chicago visits the Bell Center for what will likely be Demidov's debut. And then the regular season for the Canadiens wraps up on Wednesday when the Carolina Hurricanes come to town for the regular season finale. Hang on to your hats, folks. Buckle up the seat, whatever cliche you can come up with. It's going to get exciting and it's going to get fast-paced this week. we will be back, of course, next Saturday, April 19th. And here's where we want your help, because next Saturday, obviously, the playoffs for the Canadiens will not yet have taken off. And so we want to spend next Saturday doing a pre-playoff, kind of playoff preview Rocket Sports mailbag. So we want you to send in your questions regarding the Canadiens or their prospects. Laval's about to head to the playoffs. The Canadiens are about to head to the playoffs. What questions do you have that you would like us to answer on next week's show? You can text them to us, 585-3-ROCKET. You can drop them in the comments on YouTube if you have questions there. You can hit us up on social media at Habs Connection. You can email us, hello@rocketsportsmedia.com. Just send in your questions for next week's mailbag episode. And just enjoy what's going to be a very exciting handful of days here for the Montreal Canadiens. It's going to be exciting to see how they end up in the standings and what Demidov does in his debut. Thank you so much for listening to the Canadiens Connection podcast. We will see you again next Saturday, April 19th, right here on Rocket Sports Radio.
Click subscribe so you never miss an episode of Canadiens Connection. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Rocket Sports.